working. So glad. Oh, there we go. We want to thank you all for coming to our Family Missions Conference. And like I mentioned, there are donuts and water and snacks over there. So please feel free to get some for yourself. And we're going to turn it over to Tyler and Kelly here in a few minutes once they get their donuts. But thank you all again for coming, and we're excited. All right. You get 2 hours on us, so we'll sit down a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed the Ohio State when I walked in. It's like I should have worn my other Illinois shirt. We did make it to the March Madness. Yeah, I know. Will they play UConn tonight? Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It is good to see your faces. Thank you for the donut. I haven't had Krispy Kreme in a long time.
They're the best.
I forget how they just melt in your mouth.
So
Yeah,
good.
Had a little roosters last night. Donkey sauce is a little hot.
But super good.
Yeah, I just went the traditional ones.
They're yummy.
So Paul, whenever, will this flip it automatically? Okay, all right. So today, what we're going to be kind of moving through together is really just looking at how in the world as a church or as a family can I be involved in internationals living around me. And so there'll be a few outbreaks.
We've already done the pandemic, Tyler.
Yeah.
We don't need more outbreaks.
A few breakouts.
There you go.
So you're not just going to be sitting there for the next hour just listening to us, but we're just going to kind of take you through a series of barriers that really do hinder the local church or hinder a family with all the internationals living in my area. Why is it that, it's still so hard to have ministry with them? Why is it still so hard to kind of reach out to them? And we're going to just kind of step over some of those barriers, and hopefully today will be a motivation and kind of inspiration and a practical look at how our family, how our church can really have an impact for the nations, even though we're not in Bulgaria or France or Japan or Africa. And this is one of the things I do like about our family's ministry, is that it is transferable. I always think of Eddie and Amanda Simmons, and they're out in the bush of Africa, living in hammocks with the lions and the elephants. And
those hyenas. Did you see the video of that the other day?
I did not.
Nope.
And
God did not call me to Africa.
yeah. For me, it's the snakes. We don't have any poisonous snakes where we're at. So it's like to hear their story of ministry to, the Kenyans. It's like, you go, Eddie and Amanda.
Thank you
It's
for
hard
being the ones to go.
Yeah, it's like, but how does that transfer to me here in, Midwest of the U.S.? And that's what I like about us is, no matter if it is international students, if it's just immigrants, internationals living among you, whether it's just your coworkers, neighbors, like whatever we're talking about today, you can kind of think through of the people that you have a heart for to come to know the Lord. And it's like, how can I impact them? How can I influence them with the gospel? And so what we're going today is just really kind of, though it's geared internationally to make you think that way in your community, but it also really does have an impact on just, and what I hope when you walk out the doors is that you can say, we can do that. Mm-hmm. Like whatever you just experienced this morning, you can say, to your family or to people in your church when you walk out, hey, we can do that. That's something we can do and be excited about it. So first barrier that we're going to get into is the natural barrier of a us versus them mentality. This is so built within us naturally. For example, when our family watches a sporting event, we yell, I-L-L. And we don't cheer like we've won multiple national championships. You can already hear the sadness and desperation in our football chant.
It's a tough life. Illini fans, Cubs fans, that's right.
Yeah, so you have it, you get it on the fun side of life with the us-them mentality with sports rivalry. Obviously, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry is a clear example of that. For us in Illinois, it's Cubs-Cardinals baseball. That's the big rivalry there. And so, you kind of have the us-them mentality. And that was even at our putt-putt. Whenever the last hole, you would either putt into the Cubs hole or to the Cardinals hole, and there was a score and determining. And so there's just, so there's kind of just fun, fan, us-them mentality that you get. But then it can get to areas where it's not so fun, where it gets very serious of trying to divide people into us-them groups. Come the next presidential election, I mean, that's all that's happening is trying to divide you into us-them, 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 so that, we can kind of, it's all dividing people. And one of the most natural ways to divide people is by where you're from, your ethnicity. And I see it every day on campus. My Chinese students who come to the University of Illinois, guess who they're hanging out with?
Chinese students.
Students from China, yeah. Taiwanese students. So Thursday night, English corner, we had a large group of Koreans, a large group of Taiwanese students, and they were in their groups. So when they did the group project, it's just hard to break free from that us-them mentality. It is really cool in English corner to start to see that happen. So they'll come in September, and then like that first fall break, when I see the Pakistani and the Italian and the Indian and the Korean and the Japanese, and they all go to West Coast, that's pretty cool to see, hey, we're starting to see it's not so much us, them, but just us. And so in a church setting, it's easy to have an us-them mentality that, we are who we are and they are who they are. And what happens is it's when you have that so built within you, it makes it harder to serve, it makes it harder to be kind, it makes it harder to care because it's them, it's not us. Let's be concerned about us, let's worry about us, let's take care of us, and we don't have to worry about them, or they wouldn't come, they're not a part of us. And one of my favorite passages is Leviticus 19:33 and 34. I don't know how many of you have favorite passages in the book of Leviticus. It's not really where people normally go for really my favorite verses of the Bible. When he slices his goat for the 44th time. I love that, Leviticus. So in this passage, it really is just kind of teaching the layers of love others as you love yourself. And one of these layers, in verse 33 and 34, says, if you have a stranger or a foreigner, some translations would be an alien, if you have any of those living among you, if you have a foreigner living among you, it says, do not mistreat them, but rather you love them as you love yourself. You treat them as one who is native born, for remember, you were once strangers in Egypt, is what it says, and I am your God. And out of this, there are three, main statements. And one comes directly from Jesus as when he was asked the greatest commandment. And Jesus' answer to that was what? Yep. So love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like the first, and that is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And he said, on these two things hang all the law and prophets. All the writings that you have in the Old Testament Scripture hang on to love God and to love others as you love yourself. And here is a very specific layer of what it means to love others as you love yourself, and that is to love those who are not from where you're from, the them. And it says specifically that you are to treat them as one who is native born. And so are you to treat them as a them, or are you to treat them as an us? An us. I mean, this is all us language. If you're going to love somebody as you love yourself, you're not treating them as a them, you're treating them as and us, in that specific sense, as a me. I want to be treated this way, and I'm going to treat you that way. And then specifically in that, treat them one as native born is a whole perspective change. And that's a big deal. I mean, that's part of the whole Christian faith in Romans chapter 12 there, is that when you live your life as a sacrifice to the Lord, that there is a transforming property that is working within you, the Spirit of God, and that it is transforming you. But also there is a renewal property that's happening. And where does that renewal property happen at? Renewing of your mind. And it's the renewing of your mind from thinking naturally to thinking spiritually. Whereas Paul would say that you shouldn't be natural, but you should be supernatural. I always liked when he told the Corinthians that. 'Cause, I always want to be super fast, or however you want to think of supernatural. But it's not to be just naturally thinking and how everybody thinks, how it's built within you to have us-them mentality, but it's definitely a renewal of your mind to have this whole spiritual sense of God loves people. And lastly, what this says in Leviticus 33:34 is that you guys were strangers in Egypt. You know what it was like to be the them. All right? That's what God is saying. You understood the us-them mentality that was happening because you were the them. You were treated very harshly. You were enslaved. You weren't a part of the fabric of Egyptian culture and life. You were definitely treated as the them. Egyptians' gods. What did that say about their gods and what they were concerned about you? And obviously the answer was their gods wouldn't care about us, because if they were serving their gods, look at how they treated us. And that's what this is teaching, is that God is saying, I am your God. I want you to treat strangers. I want you, when you have foreigners who live among you, I do not want you to mistreat them, but I want you to rather treat them as one native born. Love them as you love yourself, because I am your God and I am their God. That's the whole connection here, is that how you treat other people declares what you believe about me. And this is a common question that I get at English Corner, and that is, Tyler, why do you do what you do? And I just say very specifically as I can that it's faith-based, that it's out of my faith. And I'll tell them I believe that in a God, and I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ, and that I believe that God loves not only me, but that He loves all people, and that He has called us to not only just to serve here, but to serve and love all people. So that's why I do what I do, is out of my faith belief system and obedience, that I'm to love all, to not mistreat them, but to love them as one's native born. And so this is this kind of first barrier to really think through for your church, to think through for your family, but definitely think through yourself of, how do I perceive people? Is it through an us-them mentality? And it's easier to then stay separated in groups. And one of the statistics that declares this so clearly is that with international students, 85% of international students will never step foot inside of an American's home. Home. Can you edit that out on the... yeah, you got that, Paul? The voice cracking. So why do you think that is? Why is it that there's many layers to this, but why is it that... So there's nearly 1 million international students study in our universities, sprinkled throughout every section of our education system in the U.S. And out of those million that come here, 850,000 will never step foot inside of an American's home. And why is that?
Because they weren't invited.
Yeah, that's number one reason. Because they were not invited. And they are not going to invite themselves. Some of you have seen me bring a hula hoop to teach this point, but I didn't. I decided to leave the hula hoop at home this year. And that's so true that we put all the pressure on other people oftentimes to cross that line of invitation. Like, yeah, I would gladly have international student at my home if one ever wanted to come, but nobody, it's not like you're going to be walking to, what is it, the Horseshoe, into the watch Ohio State game, and some guy from, Mongolia is going to be, excuse me, yeah, can I come to your house? Exactly, yeah. And if that person ever did, exactly, you would be like, no. So that's, part of that layer is the invitation, but then part of that layer is connection. The reason that we don't invite is because we're not connected to them at all, and it's in your groups you stay, and in my groups we stay, and that's how this works so often. So today we have 3 breakouts. This is going to be breakout number 1. You want to explain breakout number 1?
So just kind of in that same vein that we were talking about right there, a lot of times those students aren't getting invited in because people don't even necessarily know how many internationals are even among them. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to break up into small groups. You can partner up with someone. You can do like groups of 4, whatever you guys want to do. But what you're going to do is spend the next, 10 minutes?
Sure.
Around 10 minutes, Googling international students around where you live. So, or international, it doesn't have to be students either. If you're like, I look and maybe at their junior college you don't have very many, well, then you can think of other areas where internationals might be. But, I mean, if you're looking at Ohio State University, you're going to start pulling up some big numbers here pretty quick. So just start Googling international students near, towns. And then start sharing and find out maybe where the largest populations are from. But start identifying where internationals may be living in your communities. And you can think about factories they may be working at. You can think about certain farms that employ a lot, different things among those ways. But start thinking creatively and start identifying where are internationals living among us. Any other points, Tyler?
This is the introvert's favorite part of the time of the session, the group work.
That's right. But this will be fun, though, if you keep your same groups working today,
Yeah.
because
So-
it'll be a collaborative.
So just
We're going to keep building on
find
this.
some people to connect in with, and so yeah, whether it's international students at a university, whether you know some factories around here that you could maybe Google, find some numbers on those workers, those kind of things. mistake that I made.
Probably not, Tyler.
So as I was driving in, I noticed Columbus State University in Columbus. And so I started Googling Columbus State international students, and they had a whole global community center, and they had all this stuff going on with international students. And then I noticed it was Columbus, Georgia. And so that's how research can happen sometimes. You can go down a path and then realize, I didn't see this all the way through. So
First important step, make sure you know the city and state
Yeah.
that you're researching.
Yeah.
So what were some things that maybe you found in your areas? Like, tell me where you looked and some numbers and things that you found. Anybody can share in your group.
I'll start off, it's easier to go first.
Yeah.
So we just looked at multiple, started from the community where we live in, mostly Columbus. And Columbus has about 8% international bodies that live here that were born internationally. So that was 8%. And then at the Ohio State College, there was 9.1% of their active body that is international students. And then Otterbein was about 0.2%, which is just right next door. Columbus State University College that you're probably thinking about was 1.3%.
not the one in Georgia.
Yeah, and then out of that, in Westerville, 97.18% of Westerville residents were born in the U.S. Of those not born in the U.S., the largest percentage is from Asia. And so out of that group, there was Asia in Columbus, Bhutan, I might be saying that wrong, Somalia, a Democratic Republic of Congo, India, Mexico, among others.
Awesome. Anybody else? Data you found?
I didn't have as much data, but I know that in Marysville, they have the Honda plant, and there's a lot of Japanese people there, because they come to work at the Honda plant, and what's their names, Sarah? The Crows. The Crows, yeah, they work there, with them, so that's cool. But then, I found a website called International Friendships, and they do, it sounds like a lot of what you guys do, they do like cookouts, and they pick them up from the airport, like they do, English corners and Bible studies and stuff like that. So, and they do that at Ohio State, and you can like volunteer on their website. Awesome.
So when I saw the breakout and it said researching internationals among us, I didn't research internationals. I looked up immigrants in Ohio. In Franklin County, there's about 150,000 residents of Franklin County, which is 11% of the population were born outside of the U.S. It's the highest total of any Ohio county.
Wow.
And it said 1 in 6 Columbus residents speaks a language other than English at home.
Wow.
And mostly it was Indian, Mexican, and mainly in China.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that come across was, I think Columbus was like the 14th largest city for home for international. Something like that.
Here in the middle of the U.S., you have a very highly populated, highly international town that you're living in. And it's trying to, again, it's trying to switch that natural thought to the spiritual thought, the renewing of the mind. And part of that renewal of the mind is, am I here as a believer for a purpose to share with these who have no idea about Jesus? Like, do I just live here because this is where my family lived, or, my grandfather or father moved, what's the normal story, up from Kentucky to get a job and then planted us here, and we just lived here, and, we just go to church and we just kind of live life here? Or have you been, planted here for a purpose? One of my favorite quotes from one of the visiting scholars that's in my Bible study arena, she's a Russian physicist, and we were going through Bible study, and this is what she said. She said, "Perhaps God brought me from Russia to the U.S. to meet a man named Taylor," that's what they all call me, Taylor Swift there, and to share with me God's knowledge. And she really believes that. Like, she really, like, that I wasn't going to find it there. But perhaps God brought me from Russia to the U.S. so that this person could tell me about God, because that's how much, you know, God loves me. And you kind of, you know, that's trying to renew the, or perhaps, you know, where we're living at is a place, an opportunity that we can, you know, be able to reach the nations. That whole Great Commission, go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them. And so much from a little kid on, it's go, like, go to Africa, go to Japan, go. But here it might just be, yeah, go to a university, go to the Honda plant and be like, hey, our family would love to host some Japanese students to see what, or Japanese workers, if they're looking for friendship, if they're just wanting to know what to do in Columbus, you know, we'd gladly be that people. Or our church is having, you know, a fish fry, whatever, you know. So it's not just universities, you know, factories, workplaces, little kid schools. What else? Your research. Whoever would like to share about the research.
We live in a little town east of Columbus in Whitehall, and there's only 20,000 people in the city of Whitehall. 2,000 of them were born outside of the United States. So that was kind of surprising.
Yeah. So if my math is correct, that's 10%?
Wow.
So yeah, that's not just born out of Ohio, that's born out of the whole U.S. Huh? Yeah.
Schools, because I babysit and my girls go to the Westerville ELC, which is a special needs preschool connected to the city schools, but they take half typicals and half special needs, and we just started there because I know there's, I don't know if it's half, but it seems like half the students' parents are foreign. Not too many Asian, but a few, but mainly, I don't know where they're from, but it seemed like Somalia or, I don't know, I get the idea they're Muslim background. But anyway, you know, my kids, that's just what I see every day. And so there's, you know, I'd say a third to a half of them are foreign. And so we looked up Westerville schools, just Westerville city schools, and they have 8% Hispanic, 5% Asian, 52% white. We've got more ethnicity than where they're from, but that's.
And Westerville's always been intentional about doing that. Because of the landscape of the school, I grew up in Westerville City Schools, and because it was predominantly white for years, they really moved into the city and started to annex the city to bring in a cross culture, you know what I mean, to really allow that to be a part of Westerville City Schools. And so they've really been welcoming to that in the school district.
And that was kind of our kids' experience at grade school. They went to a school called Westview, and it was very international, and it's so.
Our granddaughter, she's in second grade this year, but last year in her class, half of her class was from Nepal.
Oh,
Half. And she talks about, you know, Nepali, her friends this year. So there's a lot in Bruinsburg.
What I think is neat is our kids and grandkids, different things, they're experiencing a different.
Grandkids? We don't have grandkids.
I'm saying,
What's going on?
Talking about other people in the room. That's right. That's right. Anyway, my point is, I was talking room, not you guys. I'm not ready for that for a long, long time.
Amen. Amen.
That's
Preach
right.
it, sister. Preach it.
Anyway, my point is my classrooms didn't look like that growing up. And I think schools are being a lot more intentional on those areas. And there's just been so many that have moved here since the olden days when I was in school. Is that what you guys think? But our kids' worldview is being shaped in a different way. Like they do have friends from a lot of these other countries, and their experiences are unique. And so I love that my kids were able to be at school where, many languages were spoken, different holidays were celebrated. So it's a pretty cool thing that they are getting to experience.
The us-them mentality, that's really what we're trying to get over here. Just like Jerry said, nobody's coming up to you to, can you invite me into your home? And it's like when my cousin Sarah, when she mentioned that in 2009 at Tyler, I just feel like our churches are missing the opportunity with these international students who are coming here. That was the first time I'd ever really thought about, well, the nations are coming here. Like, we have an opportunity. I'd been pastoring for nearly 10 years, and, I just never, I wasn't looking in Decatur at like Millikan University or what international students or what are the nations among us doing that we can have an impact. I was just living life, pastoring a church, and when she made that statement, then it just never left. And that's kind of where God directed our story, directed our family. And so that's why I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come and just try to bring some awareness to that spark of, man, there are a lot of people who just have no good understanding of Jesus living around me, and a lot of good people who just need some friendship, need some kindness, and just need somebody's just got to take the first step, and that is the hard step. And that's kind of our next teaching point here, is bridging fear and comfort, that barrier with faith and trust. So who here would identify themselves as an introvert? Anybody here? All right. So we're about halfway. Good. So everybody gets this fear and comfort situation, but I think introverts feel it a little bit more maybe on dealing with people. What is one of the things that you have done in your life that has been way outside your area of comfort? That took all kind of guts, took a lot of courage, took a lot of bravery, something you were not comfortable with, something that gave you the butterflies, your hands start sweating, you get nervous, and you're like,
There's a lot of faith and trust involved in that.
We go to Bob Evans every week.
Yep.
Have a server who's Hispanic. Her brother has cancer.
Okay.
And I felt the need to send him a card,
Yep.
letting him know that we're praying for him. And I've sent him two.
Okay.
And the Lord worked it out so that the second one that I sent, he had had really, really bad week with chemo. There was one where it was chemo 5 days that week.
Yep.
And I wrote what I felt the Lord wanted me to about, I know you don't know me, but our church is praying for you.
Yep.
And when I saw her this last Thursday, he had one full week where he did not vomit. And I pulled out the card to give to her, and she goes, oh, that's just like you. And I said, what are you talking about? And he's worried about the next week, starting the 27th, it's 5 days again. But she's Hispanic, her family's Hispanic, and I got a little leery about her nephew read the card and thought that the sister had been sending cards.
Oh, okay.
And when he found out it wasn't her that was doing it, he had tears in his eyes
Yeah.
because we're a different nationality than them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all through Christ. It's nothing that I do,
Yep.
but it's called obedience.
Yep.
And I was scared. I was stepping out of my comfort zone.
Yep.
But I'm so grateful because he wants to meet with us after his chemos and stuff for
Oh,
him
that's
so
cool.
that we can get together. Because I told him in the note that we're praying for him physically, but we're also praying for him spiritually.
Yep.
You don't know who all you're going to touch.
You don't. That's the whole thing. Like, and that's part of what fear does is like, you don't know what's going to happen. And if you play the what if game like I do, it's to the negative. What if they receive this? Like, who's this lady writing me cards? Yeah, exactly. It's like, so I shouldn't even write. It's probably not, nothing's ever going to happen. So I'm such an image person. So if this is comfort land, this is where I like to stay. I don't know if anybody of you are like me in that sense, but I really do like comfort. And what happens is there's an invisible fence around my land, and guess what this invisible fence is made up of? Fear. You get a prize. And anytime I feel like God is working in my life, and normally what is happening is with a person. Like there's some interaction with a person that I need to have a conversation with, an invitation, whether it's with a complete, stranger, foreigner, to go up to them, they don't know me, or whether it's with somebody I know really well, but we need to have a serious conversation, whatever it is, that is, I feel like God is laying on my heart that's out of my comfort zone. As soon as I start thinking about going that way and doing that, conversation, all of a sudden, this fence starts sending signals. And I mean, it's strong. And as soon as I start to try to step outside, all of a sudden, it starts really like pulsating, fear. I don't think that's going to work, Tyler. There's a lot of problems with that. You need to think through this more. You can come back to it tomorrow. You can try it, look at it. And so all it is doing is it's wanting me to stay where? Yeah, to stay right here in comfort. Because I love comfort. And so and it's so hard, to break free from this fear that just works at us, and especially with dealing with internationals, because it's the whole unknown. Like, I don't know where to begin. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know who to start with. And so with all that working, what ends up happening so much of the time, we just stay here. It's like it was a good thought. I wonder what would have happened. And usually what happens, you find yourself in the land of comfort, but you're not comfortable at all, because you realized, and if only I would have stepped out in fear, then at least I would have known what would have happened. Then at least I would have known if this person would have, came to the house, if this person would have come to church, in those situations. So with fear, the whole thing is, again, changing the natural that's at work with us to the spiritual. It's the faith and the trust that God really is at work in your life. That's what the writer of Hebrews says that faith is that it's impossible to please God without faith. Because first you must believe that God exists, which makes sense. But then the second part is you must believe that He is a rewarder of those who seek Him, which is just a way to say that you must believe that God is actually involved in your life. That He's not just up there, created everything and backed out. It's like, have fun while ever you're there, and then I'll meet you when you come my way. It's that God is actually involved in your life. And that's so clearly in the teachings of Jesus. When you pray, pray in secret. When you give, give in secret. When you fast, give in secret. And why did he say that? What's the purpose of Jesus saying those things that, especially to the Pharisees, but why did he say, do this in secret?
He's not seeking praise for himself that way, in my opinion.
All right, that's the first part of it, is because when you do it publicly, you know you're going to get public praise for it. And so so there's a second part to why he said do it in secret. It's one that you don't get the praise of men, but do it in secret because what? Does anybody remember?
Well, the Pharisees and all of them did it in public so they would be men pleasers.
Correct. And so he's saying do it in secret. There we go. Because the only one who sees you in secret is the Lord. And Jesus says, trust that the Lord who sees you in secret will reward you. It's much easier to trust the people I can see and hear rewarding me. He says, do it in secret because there is a God who actually is at work in your life, who is what is you're going through. He's there. And that's this whole, the faith and trust that, man, when I'm going out my fear zone here, when I'm crossing that barrier, I'm trusting that there is a God who is walking with me, that I'm not walking alone. And so with our fear, there's one of the biggest fears of with internationals is the language fear. That's the question I get most often whenever I speak about our ministry. I'll have a Q&A session.
Either one works.
Thanks, babe.
You're good.
And it's almost always in one of those Q&A sessions is, well, how can you understand them? And that's, if that we talked with people in our church about having, internationals into their homes. That was the number one question. Well, can I even how can we communicate, Tyler? That's the number one fear is communication. And with international students, that's really not too big of a deal because they have to pass a certain level of English proficiency to even be able to get into study at our universities. So for most of our international students that are living around here, they're going to be able to understand you just like you understand me, just with a different accent. And there might be some words that, but then with the immigrant population or refugees or maybe people coming in to work, their language skills may be a little bit lower. And I deal with some lower language skills in the sense of spouses who come with their husbands. Sometimes they don't have the same language level. And I have visiting scholars who come, or professors who are taking a year, and they'll come and do a year research at the University of Illinois, but they don't have to pass the English test. And you can tell they wouldn't pass the English test. And so their language is much lower than even their students are coming. And so in those situations, you just got to take things slower. You just have to have more patience. It's okay if they take out their phone and have to start looking up words and what they mean and understand them. And just a couple of points here with the language is that if you get out of your fear, you meet some international people, do not judge them on that first interaction based on their language communication. It takes, for me, I'll meet them in September, and for several students, it won't be till like nearly Halloween, like near the end of October, that I really begin to see who this person is, simply because their comfort level with the language keeps their personality locked in. And so I've been, wrong several times and being like, man, this person has no personality. They're very blah. Like they don't really want to be here. They could care less about what's going on. And then by the, come Thanksgiving time, and they're at our house, and it's like, whoa, there you are. There's the humor. There's the sarcasm. There's the fun. There's the, the person I did not see, simply because the language doesn't allow them. And so take some time there. And then the last point is, when you have spiritual concepts with people who don't speak English as their first language, you need to have more than just you sharing and they're nodding their head and understanding and then moving on. Because most likely when they nodded their head with understanding, smiled at you like, oh, you're getting this, they're not getting it. And so simple things like mercy, like grace, you guys understand this when you would tell us, yeah, you need to have the grace of God in your life. And they might smile and nod at you, but they have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to the grace of God. I mean, that's a question I ask so many of my students. Do you know what grace is? And I'm way up in the high 90s of students who, like, Tyler, I don't know what grace is. It's like, well, you chose the name Grace as your American name, and you don't even know what grace is. Like, Grace, come on.
It's a name.
Yeah. And like, no, Tyler, I don't. So here's another breakout for you in dealing with trying to get kind of over this fear of language barrier. You're going to have a statement given to you where you need to make the complicated language more simple. So I'm going to give you a very churchy statement.
Very churchy statement.
And I want you to take 10 minutes and make this churchy statement as simple as possible.
And as you talk to the person, like people in your group, and be like, okay, I think we can say it this way. But then think it through together. Be like, actually, I don't know if that concept actually makes sense. And to keep breaking it down simple.
And there may be some of these words that you don't quite understand the meaning of them in the church sense. And so it's going to put you in the sense of like an international, like hearing what these Christian terms are and trying to wonder, what does this mean for my life? But I have no idea really what this meaning is. And so you're going to have to get out your phone and do maybe some lookup. But, all right, so here it is.
Drum roll, please. There you go.
I actually thought I was pressing the button that made it change, but I guess Paul's just back there when he sees me press the button and he hits the button. All right. So due to the incarnation, you can have justification through the process of imputation, resulting in a life of sanctification, beginning with the reconciliation and ending in glorification.
How often do you say this sentence to people? Just curious.
You did it at church camp with younger kids, didn't you, one time?
Yeah, I taught a whole 5th and 6th grade week camp based on this. So,
Good luck. Make that simple.
so yeah. So all you're doing is making. So especially those words that are underlined. Yeah. All right, we're back after your fun, wonderful breakout.
Hey, you can keep working on it,
Yeah,
man.
you can go at the end there, buddy. So this is definitely a real situation where if you're speaking with people whose English language is not their first language, and sometimes, a lot of times, if they can speak English really well, they just haven't heard the terms that you grew up with in church and knowing. For example, we were doing a Bible study with international students on James, and we get to James 2:13, and it says, "Mercy triumphs over judgment." It's just such a good verse, and it was just like, I was like, man, isn't that good? And none of my students responded with like any kind of acceptance of, and they were just kind of looking at me, and it's like, well, what's going on here? I was like, how many of you know what mercy means? Not a single hand went up. So it's like, all right, we got to start explaining mercy. How many of you know what triumph means? Never heard the word triumph. Didn't know what triumph was. So judgment, oh, we got judgment. And so like, yeah, the only part of that verse that they understood was the judgment part and not the triumph.
So they didn't even understand the concept of mercy from the aspect of their own.
Yeah, mercy was just a blank, yeah. And so that's why you have to have it's a continual conversation. That's why, a lot of times at least with my students, it's good to take them to church, but for them just to hear a gospel presentation and then be the challenge, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to choose to accept it or reject it? It's like, they may not have an understanding of what they're, like this happened to me in my first Easter service. I preached an Easter sermon. We had like 11 international students there back in 2013. Great Easter. I get home, we passed out connect cards. Fill out this card if you want to follow Jesus, if you want a prayer. I get home that afternoon or that evening, going through my connect cards and like, Yahweh, I want to follow Jesus. What? That's awesome.
He was so excited.
Gyujin. Yes, checked, I want to follow Jesus. And it was just one after the other, Yukiko. And that was like 9 out of the 11 checked. I was like, what a great, they must have. But after I got through about 3 of them, and I realized that all of them are checking this box, that something's probably going on here. I'm not that good of a preacher for them all to check this box. So sure enough, as I started having a conversation with them, all it was, well, Tyler, we just thought you wanted us to check that box. Like you didn't know that you're wanting to become, we didn't want to become a Christian or anything like that. We just thought you wanted us to check the box, so we checked the box. That's what we understood.
They're following directions.
Yeah, and so this whole process of going and a journey of conversation to explain, and you got to just keep making it simpler and simpler and simpler. And so this is kind of this breakout for you is some of these words you've probably heard of quite a bit, or some of these words you may not know so well, but let's hear how you made, due to the incarnation, you can have justification through the process of imputation, resulting in a life of sanctification, beginning with reconciliation and ending in glorification, how you can make that simpler. All right, Sarah, you're up first.
All right. Through Jesus giving his life on the cross, you can be cleared of your wrong actions, resulting in a pleasing life, reunited with God, and a new life with him.
All right, so through Jesus giving his life on the cross.
Which we knew that would result in more conversation.
Okay.
We were accepting of that.
Yeah.
But we did think we could just say, through Jesus, you can.
Yeah. Results in a life.
You can be cleared of your wrong actions,
Wrong actions.
resulting in a pleasing life, reunited with God, and a new life with him.
All right. So resulting in a pleasing life, be sanctification, united with him, reconciliation, and living with him, glorification, but no imputation.
That is hard.
It's
Yeah, we took that as,
Okay, so you combine
Clear,
the justification with the imputation.
Yes.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, that's what. That is the justification through the process of imputation. So it's the clear accounts. All right. Very good. Yeah. I can see the.
So I just put, because we are separated from God, because of mankind breaking God's law, Jesus came to restore us by being our substitute for God's judgment that we deserve due to our rebellion. Jesus took on that judgment and satisfied it through his sacrifice for us. And when you place your faith, trust in Jesus, we become reconciled or reconnected, I would probably use instead of reconciled, so that reconnected with God and live a life set apart in this world for him, and one day be with him forever. Okay.
And so, what is the word picture coming strongly out of that statement?
Word statement.
That exceeds everything in work.
Yeah. So read your first two lines.
Because we were separated from God because of mankind breaking God's law.
Yeah. And then the next line is?
Jesus came to restore us by being our substitute for God's judgment.
Okay. So, that's definitely setting up God as judge, man as, that's what.
Or incarnation, right? There had to be a reason for Jesus to come. So,
Because you broke the.
that they have, failed because of.
Yeah.
We have failed because of breaking God's law.
Yeah. So you broke God's law, and now you need to be made right before God again. You can't be made right, so you need a substitute. And that's all, trying to do imputation language. And so that whole first part it really is setting up a word picture of a judge with a criminal. And the criminal needs to get its punishment, but somebody else comes who did not do the crime and takes the punishment. And then once they've taken that punishment, the other person who did the crime gets to go free. And that's everything that you're saying there. And that's the word picture. I think I've told you this story before with Gabby, my Spaniard, and then Xinhua from Taiwan. Xinhua, all he had heard is the Bible story of a really big guy gets hit in the head with a stone. And Gabby's like, David and Goliath. And so Gabby tells David and Goliath. But then Xinhua's like, I have no idea what that has to do with Christianity, Tyler. And so then I try to explain, because ultimately he asked me the question, what does Jesus have to do with God? And it was substitution atonement, which you guys have, all that word picture of judgment. When I get to Gabby stole the car, judge judged him for 10 years. I come in, take his 10 years punishment. Gabby goes free, and that's what Jesus does for us. Our punishment is death, but Jesus is the substitute who takes our death, so we get to go free. And when I told that to Xinhua, you know what he told me? Tyler, that's not fair. And it's not fair, right? What is it? It's the love of God. That is the grace of God. Concept Xinhua doesn't have. So if you're like, hey, you just need to accept the grace of God, they just smile, look at you. It's making things simpler and simpler and simpler. All right? Anyone else?
Probably not as theologically sound as Michael's wonderful one. I was going for simple language.
Yeah,
So it said, God became a person so we could be right with him, bringing us together with him, making us holy, and ending in our praise to him because he treated us as if his goodness was ours.
They're very simple and succinct with the. All right. So say that again. First line.
God became a person.
All right, God became a person.
God became a person.
And that's what?
God became a person.
Yeah, that's incarnation. And,
So we could be right with him,
right, and that is justification.
bringing us together with him,
That is
reconciliation,
reconciliation.
making us holy,
That is
sanctification,
sanctification.
and ending in our praise to him,
That's glorification.
because he treated us as if his goodness was ours.
All right, and that's the transfer of accounts, the trading of sin and righteousness, imputation. You did way better than this group up here, way better. Just kidding, just kidding. Yeah, yeah. All right, anybody else? Anybody else want to share what you came up with? All right. Yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
Because God became man, you can be made right because you gave your life to Jesus, and from that you will be freed from sin, starting with the reunion and ending with giving God the glory.
Very good, very good. So this is just trying to get you to understand this process of the language barrier. It is there, but it can be overcome. And it's just trying to, especially in spiritual conversations, the conversations of faith, is trying to make things simpler. Yeah, Ashley.
Do they not have these words in their language because they literally aren't shown grace in their culture? Do they once you explain it, do they understand the concept, or are they just they've never experienced it in any form, so then they don't have a word for it?
So I think they understand the concept, but at a much lower level than what you do growing up where this is Amazing Grace is the anthem. And their view of even a Christian, if they have any kind of Christian perspective, it's not grace, it's works. It's if you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. And so that's what they are assuming you believe. And then when you start teaching what grace is, even seeing, that's not fair. And fairness is a super high value. So how can that be? That doesn't. And so there's even some complications in dealing with where we're like, yes, that's not fair. That's grace. That's so good. And they're like, well, if your value of fairness is higher than your value of grace, then God's fairness should be the highest fair. So that shouldn't happen. And so it's just working through some things. But that's one of the things actually I have been amazed about is how little knowledge of grace is through my students. And if they have little knowledge, then it's representative of where they come from and just how little knowledge there is of grace throughout the world. And for the church, that should be somewhat of an indictment. This is our number one. This is our anthem, Amazing Grace. This is what we're about, the grace of Jesus. We haven't done a good job of proclaiming it and declaring it, mouth and hands, to the nations. So.
When I talk to some people I've been working with here recently, that there's no breaks in other countries. If you steal something, it's harsh punishment. And so I think there's some of that hasn't been built into our culture where these second chances or they're spoiled, however you want to look at it.
Yep.
That mentality is still there. So I think sometimes we abuse God's picture of grace because we put our spin on it here in our culture,
For sure.
in the States,
Yep.
based on what other countries are doing, because they don't see that. I mean, it's, You know, if you do this, this is what happened, going back what you're saying as far as favoritism.
Yeah. And that's why conversation is so important. Not just a, you know, not just a declaration of here's a faith statement, you accept it or reject, like they don't know it to accept it very well. So that's why, and you have conversations with people that you have a relationship with much better. So having, you know, going to dinner, having them going bowling, doing something to build a relationship then allows for conversation to flow much easier than just stranger to stranger. And it's all part of a process we'll look up after the break.
I would even imagine that even in the school process, they don't see a lot of breaks. They have, you know what I mean, as far as their education. Patty asked a good question, well, won't their parents even show them grace at any point? And in some other countries, that's not a factor.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the guilt shame countries, it's
Yeah.
not a lot of graces.
That and some kids are held at higher standards
Yeah.
than, say, you know, a boy versus a girl in some
yeah.
cultures. So,
Yeah.
you know, that term grace isn't something that you see across the world.
Yeah, I've had a few students try to explain it as like graceful, like, you know, you're like a ballet dancer or something. It's like, that's not. Break time. Yeah. So,
Like 5 minutes, use the restroom or whatever, and then we'll, 30 minutes to wrap up.
yep, then we'll bring the kids on stage. So we're in the home stretch here of how we do life with international students, and it's connect, invite, create. Connect, invite, create. And so the fear barrier that really works on people is where to begin. And that will probably even be part of what you're thinking right now, or as you leave here and have some conversation about this, is like I heard what Tyler and Kelly were saying, but I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what to even do. And to me, the most important part is not where to begin, but it is with when to begin. And that's just a little play on words, but it's not, again, to have the whole fear illustration, the where, it begins to put in those fear fences that keep you in comfort. Like, I don't know where to begin. You try to think of, if I did this, but I don't know who to even talk to, and all that fear begins to keep you in comfort. And so the first thing to do is just saying, I'm beginning. Like, whatever, on this date, of Easter, or by Labor Day, or by Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is going to be my first thing with internationals. I'm having them over to my house for dinner, or I'm taking them a Thanksgiving dinner, or we're having a church things. That is when we're beginning. And so by that time, I'll figure it out. I'll talk to people, but I am going to begin. And so that's really such an important part of, it's not the where, but you really need to have the when. I am starting this process, even though I don't know where it's going to take me. I don't know how it's going to work, but on this date, I'm heading out. I'm moving on. And so the connect part, and that's usually if you have questions and the question and answer time here in a little bit, this is a lot of the questions about the where do I meet international students? Where do I meet with internationals? And again, it's part of that first breakout section. That's kind of the research. You just start researching. If you are going to be at the school, you go to the school, talk to the secretary. Hey, our family would like to help some international people here at the school. If they, what is a way that we could serve them? And then it starts that conversation. If it's at a university, you go to the student services, and they have like a whole list of international student organizations, and you start contacting their leaders. That's what we did. We contacted 6 of the international student organization leaders, and we got connected in with the one we felt best for us was English Corner. But also, colleges have student services that want just home host families. That's what my brother did we have University of Illinois in Edwardsville, Southern Illinois in Edwardsville. That's where they're at. And they just went to the university. They said, hey, yeah, we have a host program. We'll connect you with 2 or 3 students. And that's every month they just had them they took them to their kids' volleyball games and basketball games, had them over for dinner, took them to church. And it was just, that's how they got connected in. And so there are definitely places where you can get connected. It's not just, you're driving around and you just see people walking. It's like, how would I ever connect with these people? There are connection points, and usually those connection points are meeting needs. You find out where I can come and be hands and feet to meet people's needs, and that's usually where we meet. So we connect with English and American culture and an American family. Come see what an American family is like. Our students, one of their needs is they want to practice English, they want to learn American culture, they want to meet Americans, and so, voila. Sorry, guys, this is what you got. So let's get into our kids here. So we'll start oldest to. So once we connect by meeting needs, so we've connected on campus. I've had them in conversation group, had them at, English Corner night. We then invite to our family, invite to our home. Or as you can see there, the 3 H's: hobbies, holidays, homes. And that's what we invite the students to then build the relationship. Because again, we want to have conversations of faith. And that's ultimately what the third part is, create pathways of faith. In order to create these pathways of faith, this invitation to a Bible study, to have a conversation about, John 3:16, how to have, a conversation of faith with a student. We'd like to know them, and so that's through invitation. So Mason, what is one of your favorite events that our family does with the students?
I think my favorite event would be whenever we have them over to our home for like a cookout. I think it's so much fun because you're just throwing a frisbee around with them, running, playing soccer in the front yard, playing basketball, and then ping pong. They are so stinking good at ping pong for no reason.
Well, there is a reason, yes.
There's definitely a reason. I get up there, I think I'm all right. I don't even get a point. I get whooped. But yeah, just playing anything at our house, any sort of like sports or outdoor activities with them is definitely one of my favorite things to do.
I would say one of my favorite activities to do with the students is Christmas baking day. And so on this day, it's like an 8-hour day of just baking a bunch of different things with the students, from like gingerbread competitions to trying them a bunch of different things that probably too sweet for them because they don't like a bunch of sugary things, but it's a pretty fun day.
Oh, we're getting a battery change. Likes all the cookies. Yeah. So, in your time with these students, what's one of your favorite memories that you've had, starting again with Mason working its way down?
I think one of my favorite memories I've had would be one time we all went out kayaking. And this is probably one of like my first time kayaking, so we're just going down. It's not like anything crazy. You're not going through a crazy little river or anything. But watching some of the students just tip over into the water, it was, so funny. They're all just getting up, laughing about it. Some of them were freaking out, but it's a blast. Kayaking, that's one of my favorite memories I think I've had with the students.
Mine would be with one of our past students, Natasha. And I grew up with her being like a big older sister for me, I guess. And so she would come over, even when she lived in Chicago, she would still come over to our house for Thanksgiving. And it became almost a tradition after Thanksgiving every day to go Black Friday shopping with her. And so we'd go to our Starbucks, get our drinks, and then just a crazy day of shopping. That's probably one of my favorite times.
I like whenever we had the cookout time with all the students, and I took them into the big barn, and we played basketball with the 6 or 7 students, and half of them had no idea what they were doing, and so that was just pretty fun to kind of just watch them double dribble and airball and be so confused whenever they're doing it. So.
All right, good job, guys.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Which one do I sit in?
What's my favorite memory? One of my favorite memories, Gary, was really early on. So Julie, she was from Taiwan, and so when she graduated, she had a job in Seattle. But when she got to Seattle, that job wasn't there. And so then I was kind of like her go-to mentor person here in the States. So she was like, Tyler, what do I do? And so we had conversations of faith, and I told her, I'm praying for you. You'll be okay. Everything will work out. There's lots available for you. And so sure enough, she got a job out there, and she started going to church out there, and she came back for Thanksgiving, and we had her over for our house for a meal. And I just remember, like, after just praying over our food, that was one of our conversations about prayer. Like, Tyler, can I pray? It's like, yeah, you can pray too. It's like, it's not just me. And so and there's that whole conversation of, you know, how do you pray? And it's just kind of it was the validation of she had trust in me because we had loved on her, and that allowed for these conversations, these moments of impacting a life. And so yeah, we saw her when we went to Taiwan in 2019, and then she just got married a couple years ago, and her life is moving on. So that's mine.
My favorite?
Sure.
So one of my favorite times is we had one student we got really, really close to, and then she took a job in San Francisco. So I was in San Francisco on a trip, and I got to meet up with her for coffee before heading to the airport. And just seeing her, and then she just got so teary-eyed when she hugged me and me hugging her, and it was just like, what we do matters, and you see it in the moment. It's like those, like, yep, I know why God has us do what we do. And sometimes you just get in the routine, and you kind of forget. It's like, oh, yeah, I like being with these students, but the impact that has was good for her and me at that moment. That was really good. And like Millie was talking about our student that she got really close to. A few months ago, I was up in Chicago, and I got to meet up with her, and she now has a baby. So I got to like play with her little one and see her now in a role as a mom. So that's been neat, coming from like the master's student to now being married and having the baby. So that's been cool.
Yeah, we've been in this 10 years, so your students go through a lot of life change after it's kind of crazy to look back. So Mason was a first grader, Millie was a kindergartner, Madden was still in Korea. And so that's when we started. He was, 1 year old. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I know. I see it as an aunt, not the grandma, but yes. Yeah, I always felt like I was more of like big sister to these students, and now I'm like, I think I'm more like mom. But that's okay. I'll embrace it. And so we're going to kind of talk through 10 ways to build friendship with internationals in your communities. This is something that I wrote up for the Treasure magazine with WNAC, so it's in the most recent article as well. So if you're like later, like, where was that? It's online. But one way you can start to begin is to volunteer in the ESL program in your local schools. So just offer to sit and read with the students as they begin to work on their English skills. I remember I did this in Millie's class when she was younger, and there was a little boy that arrived from Syria, 0 English. So he and I sat down with an iPad, and we just started playing games. And just through like giggling and laughing, and then you start kind of working through concepts like colors and different stuff. It was simple, but it was just a really good time. It was fun to do with them. You could visit a local park and connect with young moms. Obviously, I'm kind of writing this as for the women's magazine, so it was kind of from a female perspective here. But many young moms are lonely and desiring connection. So it's a great way to be a much-needed friend. I mean, I think that's across the board, internationals and non-internationals. I think that's a need regardless, but they are there at those parks. You could start a cooking class at your church or in your home and invite internationals to learn how to create common dishes found in America and ask them to teach you how to make something from their cultures. You can start a weekly or bi-weekly lunch club and invite internationals to join you in trying out different restaurants in your community. Often they need help navigating the menus or learning how to tip in America. Tipping is very much an American thing. And so when they come, they don't understand how to even best do that. But also, there are so many questions you get asked when ordering. What would you like to drink? Like, if you're going to order a salad, I'll have that salad. What kind of dressing do you want? What does that mean? So there's just a lot of things that you have to work through when ordering. You can invite internationals in your home for the holidays. They love learning about American traditions surrounding any holiday. So it's fun for them to just be with us. So most of my kids' holidays have always had additional people included. You can host a baking day at Christmas and teach internationals how to make your favorite holiday treats. My mom passed away whenever I was in high school, and I have her list of cookies that she would make every year in her handwriting, and like one's even like crossed off on the stuff that she had done. And so every year I get to take her recipes and teach the international students about it. So it's a neat way to share my story with the students and then just embrace life with them. You could host a bonfire in your home, at your home, not in your home, or your church, and invite them to roast hot dogs and s'mores. They most likely have never cooked their food over an open fire and have never experienced s'mores. You could be a conversation partner. Contact your local college or university and see if there are opportunities to partner with these students to practice their English. Like we said online, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already people doing this in place that just need people to come along and say, hey, can I help? Yes, please, we need additional people. Befriend the wait staff from different countries at the local restaurants. Get to know their names to build friendships with them. We have a friend that went to the Mexican restaurant in her town and offered to do conversational English with the wait staff so they could get more familiar with just asking questions. And I thought, that's a brilliant idea. You can invite them to join you with your favorite hobbies, such as hiking, fishing, shopping. You could do a book club, photography, sewing, quilting. It's just a great way to give them an opportunity to try something new with something that you already enjoy doing. So they want to connect and they just want to be a friend. So if you're already doing something you enjoy, just bring people along with you. Mm-hmm. That's my 10 quick ways to build friendship.
And it is, again, building a bridge over that us-them mentality. It is fighting that fear of just staying in comfort and not inviting people into your life. Because for a lot of us, that's uncomfortable. I'd rather just be with my group or my family just doing my thing. But the reality is there's just so many people who have very little knowledge of Jesus, and you have the knowledge of Jesus, and you're not going to be able to exchange that knowledge of Jesus separate. And like what was mentioned before earlier is that they're probably not going to come up to you and be like, hey, can you invite me to church? Hey, can you tell me about Jesus? Hey, they're not going to be the initiator of that connection. It's up to us to be the initiator of that connection, even as uncomfortable as that might be. And I get that. And so it's just, breaking through these barriers of fear and comfort and inviting people into your life, not knowing how they're going to respond, not knowing the situation, just trusting that this is leading to an exchange of Jesus, that this is what God is working in our life.
The parks that you mentioned on there are so many opportunities, I think, might get to the park a lot, right?
Yep.
You're sitting around, as a parent, you're sitting on the bench usually, and they're watching your kids play. And I've had so many conversations with individuals, and it's short and small and brief, but it really is a great opportunity, evangelism no matter what, building relationships with people that are in your community and sitting down with them. I mean, it's amazing how many people will actually talk to you, sitting at a park while your kids are playing. So it is great.
And so we connect to invite, to create. So the connection is just, where in the world am I going to meet these people? You meet them by meeting a need. And once you meet them, it's then an invitation into your life, wherever that might be, home, hobby, or holiday. And then it's just creating conversations of faith. It's creating these pathways of faith. And I see, again, everything in images. So if you have a highway going this way, and these are people who are not following Jesus, you have a highway going this way, and these are people who are following Jesus. I look at our families like an exit ramp from this highway to that highway. And that's what so many of these people who are not following Jesus, they need somebody to be that exit ramp, just to come show them grace and talk to them about grace, that they might be able to then get on this highway of following Christ. And you can kind of think through your own life, like how you became a Christian, how you became on the highway that's following the Lord from the highway that wasn't. That there was an exit ramp there for you to come from this highway to that highway, and that exit ramp is usually in the form of a person or people. And that's usually how we come to know who Jesus is through somebody's involvement. Somebody has created a conversation or created a study, a prayer time for us to be a part of, and that's what transitioned us from that. So connect, invite, create, and that's the process by which we work through international students. Our last breakout week, we'll just kind of do it together as kind of also the Q&A section. And so we have a question and answer time for you. And so the breakout here is connect, invite, create. Like, how would you make your own plan of action with connect, invite, create?
Yeah, you identified earlier where these people are. So taking that knowledge, start thinking, okay, there are this many at the Honda plant, or this many at the university. Like, how can I find ways to connect? Like, how am I going to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So whether it's the park, the factory, the preschool, university, where can I meet the needs? How can I connect? And then how can I invite? What am I going to invite to? Is it to my family thing? Is our whole church going to connect at the Honda plant, invite to fish fry? And then we're going to create an opportunity of the gospel through that. How are we going to connect, invite, create? And so that's kind of what I want you to think through as you leave here on this whole endeavor, on this whole process of having my family, having our church be more about the nations than just simply, just about us.
And it truly is a lot of fun when you start doing this. It may seem a little scary at first, but then when they start being a part of your family, part of your, like I said, it's part of our traditions, our customs now that my kids at 4th of July, we have international students with us, or Thanksgiving, or different things, and it's become part of our family story, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, really. Last week, Sunday school, where I was at in Cookville, it was about being a part of the vine. Jesus is the vine, we are the branches. And he says, and those who abide in me obey my words, and their joy will be made full. And I was thinking, and that's been so good for our family. Our joy has been made full through this endeavor, through what God has brought us through international students. And it's not something I ever thought. I wasn't, a 10-year-old kid being like, I want to do international student ministry. Like, that was never in my process. I was going to be a pastor of a church in a traditional sense. And we were just moving forward through life that way. And then, God just, through Sarah Malone, just made that statement, kind of opened my eyes to the nations that are here, and that we can have the nations here. And sure enough, this is the way that in our family we moved in that direction. So do you have questions that you've had through this process that you would like to?
Or sparks of ideas of how you could
on your connected
start to
background.
do this.
I work in a warehouse here in Westerville, and it is very international. Our staff, or our employees, are probably 40% from Cambodia and Laos. We have about 20% Hispanic, and then the rest makes up of like white and black, and we even have some people from Africa and a few from Russia. And I've been thinking about, like, I want to, I'm gonna get shirts made in their languages that say Jesus loves you, because I wear t-shirts to work every day, and I think it would be an opportunity that it would catch their attention if I was wearing a shirt in their language. Because a lot of them don't speak English. We have to have translators. When our HR team, they use Google Translate to do everything with them for HR. Because there's some things that, like you said, they don't even understand the concept of, like, one lady keeps trying to retire, and she doesn't understand that, like, you're going to have no money. Like, you don't grasp this concept. But I just think that that's a way to connect to them and just spark opportunity.
That's awesome, yeah. Seeing anything that is from homeland is, for our students, it was the flag. So we have a big globe and poster that has all the flags on it. And they're like, this is the only place I've seen my flag since I've been here. And so there is, like, at least in our students, there was a connection to, like, there's an attraction. If you have their language in it, it'd be like, ooh, that's an attraction.
Their comfort when there's someone there, and bring a piece of their comfort to them.
Correct. Yeah, very much so.
Do you guys go through the school to do this, or do you guys have like your own separate thing and like invite them to it?
Both. So it's English Corner is a registered student organization there at the campus of the University of Illinois. It is a private student organization, but it is accepted and allowed like 600 other student organizations are. So we get to use, like, Thursday night, the Illini Union, we get to use their space for free. And so we were doing team building projects with English Corner, Marshmallow Challenge.
And you don't have like a problem with you guys like teaching scripture or like talking the Bible?
So there's not much oversight from the university on us in any way, shape, or form in that sense. And so only if a student would go and report, then would there be some issue that I could think of. But so far, no student had ever gone and say, hey, I came here for English, then they start having a Bible study in their conversation group, and this is not what I... So.
Have you ever had any issues with students being like, having political views that differ from you guys? Like, I don't know, like, have you ever had like arguments, I guess, not arguments, but like upsets about stuff like that? If that makes sense.
I mean, there's a couple moments where there was some awkward tension. One moment was a Christmas English Corner, teaching English Corner, doing the Christmas tree, ornaments, presents, and then I was talking about our family. What we do is we read the birth of Jesus in Luke chapter 2, and so I would like to open my Bible and read Luke chapter 2, and we had a Muslim lady get up and walk out at that moment. But she ended up becoming, her and her husband, a month later at our house for board game night. Then they, she's like, Kelly, you're my best friend in America. So, and then the other was some tension, like the China-Taiwan tension. We just had one situation at our house where one student was pushing that tension. Things had flared up in Taiwan and China. We were playing apples to apples, if you know that game. And so the Chinese girl, Emily, she had this word that was like ridiculous. Well, then Hao Ting, she had like China. So she threw China in, and so you're reading ridiculous, and she's like, ridiculous China. It's like, that didn't set well. Well, then somehow, the next word was like yucky or something like that. And Hao Ting had communism. And so she threw in communism.
Like, how does she keep getting these
Yeah.
cards? I know, yeah. Proof your game before you give it to them.
And so that was a little weird, awkward tension there. But I do a big questions of life conversation group, Ashley. So it is like atheist and Muslim and Buddhist and Hindu, and I'm explaining I'm a Christian. But we do it pretty respectful. There are some moments where I have to kind of push the tension, like there is a truth here. And I'll even say that my Hindu friend here, he believes in many gods. Person from China, you don't believe there's a God at all. And I believe there is one God. One of us are not all of us can be right here. It can't be what's true for you is true. There is a truth here. And so you bring some tension of truth to the situation, but it's all still done pretty respectful.
I think the key with that is you show them love, right?
Oh, yeah.
And when you're inviting them in your home and you're being a part of them, those are conversations you're not having on the first date you say hello.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more that you can get by with in a way when they know that you will truly, genuinely love them and care for them.
Yeah.
I thought you were asking a question, man.
stretching.
Any other questions?
Seems like everything you brought to us today can even be done in this church. I mean, it doesn't have to be international students.
Correct.
Just what Mike said, showing the, the kids you love them.
Yep.
I think that's like the beginning.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what I meant by this could be very transferable. Like it's definitely international focused, but it doesn't like you can have a neighbor you've never invited over to your house, don't really know, that when you go to church on Sunday, they're not going to church on Sunday. And it can just be like, I just need to connect with them, have them over or whatever, or just, and then invite, then get to some point where I'm going to create a conversation of faith. And that's the comfort fear battle. Fear will be like, nope, don't have that conversation with your neighbor. And it's like, at some point in time, I'm going to have that conversation and pray about it, the opportunity, and invite to a church event. And so yeah, it's very transferable, not just to internationals, but to
Got to be involved, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way you're going to have those conversations, build those relationships, that you're going all the way to California, and they're running up to you hugging, unless
Yeah.
you're building relationships. You can't do that when you seclude yourself from the world. And
Correct.
whether that's at work or at home, your neighbor, even in church. You just cannot have that impact. That's why he says go.
Yeah.
Make disciples, right?
And we like to stay. Comfort says stay. Yeah, it really does. It works so much in people, and that's why they don't just go, even across the road. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you guys seen the results? Like I know you said you've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Where the students are going back to their countries and starting to do different things in their countries?
So I haven't seen like that next layer, Sarah. That's the layer that, so whether it's, Tingley or UA, so we haven't seen like them back in their home country and then having through social media like the report of this person in church. So that's the layer we're hoping. And some of it was with kids, like we have some believers who have kids, and we're hoping their kids grow up as believers who then reach their families. The girl she met in San Francisco married a believer who's he's like Czechoslovakia, and we're just hoping like it's a legacy of family of faith. But as far as, not the immediate that we haven't seen through social media connection. So we'll have to find that one out a little later.
Well, it takes time too. It's not,
Yeah.
especially if they're going back to countries where it's very negative towards faith. It takes a while before that can trickle out safely.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you. Whoa, sorry. Thank you all for coming. We hope that you got a lot out of this. I know we did. And we're excited to hear ways where we are connecting, inviting, and creating those opportunities to share. So thank you all. Bye-bye.
From the top. Here we go, from the top.
Whenever you guys are ready.